Chances are your indie game is not running too well, and here are a few ways to change that. Tip number 1 is use entity spawners. Instead of scattering entities all over your map, which can take up a lot of processing power because they're constantly running the code for that specific entity, you can use entity spawners that will only run code when the player enters the area that they're in. They will then delete themselves and spawn the specified entity in their position. Tip number 2 is entity despawners. I know it may sound redundant, but the exact opposite of what we just talked about will save you lots of performance and is always a great choice. What it actually does is detects when your player leaves the area that the entity is in. It will then delete the entity, which will always save performance, and then replaces it with an entity spawner of that type. Please note that you may actually have to advance your entity spawners to store data such as what health it was at the time that you created it.
I'm still not talking about Minecraft.
The next tip is to use a chunking system like Minecraft's. This will basically break up the world into many different bits, which can then be loaded and deleted as the player moves along. It saves a lot of processing power and will make your game perform a lot better because not only does it delete the actual world itself, but it will more importantly temporarily get rid of the entities within it. The final tip is to use pooling. Pooling is basically a programming system that will allow you to reuse the same objects. So for example, if every time the user clicks, they shoot 400 bullets, instead of creating 400 individual bullets every time, just reset the 400 already created bullets back to the position of the barrel and set their movement in the direction that they've aimed instead of creating new ones. That's all my tips for improving your game's performance. There are many more ways to do this, but these are the best 4 ways to do it. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.